So this is Penelope Lowder, and we're going deeper with Penelope Lowder. So Penelope, talk to me about the importance of telling your story.
The importance of telling a story.
Telling your story, telling our, because we're
Oh,
talking about personal stories.
right. I think it's very important in telling your story because no one has a voice like yours. You may say that they have so many stories about rape, or they have so many
Mm-hmm.
stories about this. There's so many stories about that, but it's not your story.
Mm-hmm.
Every person has a unique perspective and view of rape,
Mm-hmm.
of of a family. Every perspective is new. So it's important that you get your voice out there and that people are allowed or get the opportunity to read your story
Mm-hmm.
from your point of view.
So when you say that, it makes me think of, when people say, "Oh, I'm tired of hearing and watching like slave stories and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that." I don't know how I feel about that because I feel like, I mean, Harriet's story is different
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from, I don't know, somebody else's story.
Right.
And so I don't think that, because I mean it was a hard time, but I don't think that we're tired of, I mean, they've exhausted. I mean, there's so many stories to tell.
And you're right. There are so many stories to tell. Um, I look at stories about the Holocaust. I forgot how many stories there are about the Holocaust. You have to remember, there are 10 million stories because 10 million people
Mm-hmm.
went through
Right.
this experience. And the same thing with slavery.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just one or two people.
Right. There wasn't like one slave experience.
Experience.
Right, right.
These were millions of people that went through this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, millions of stories.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, we have not heard every slave story.
Right.
We just haven't.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard one point of view from a few people, but we haven't heard a million of those stories.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what that's like?
Right. Do you have stories that are locked inside of you that you can't tell? And if so, like, not what are they, but why can't you tell? Are you protecting someone?
You know what? I do have stories I feel like I can't tell.
Mm.
I can't tell them right now because I'm not emotionally available to
Mm.
tell those stories. I'm getting there, but I feel like there is no story that you really can't tell about yourself. That story that you feel sometimes that you can't tell somehow creeps into your writing, subconsciously or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Gosh, can I not tell a story? I'm getting to the point where I feel like there isn't a story I can't tell.
Do you journal?
I used to journal.
When you did, let me ask you, when you did journal
Mhm.
and you were telling your stories, did you use real names?
Yes.
Okay.
I
I do now, but for a very long time I didn't,
Mhm.
because I don't know, what if somebody find, and I had the experience of somebody reading my journal.
Oh,
So,
yeah. And see, that was my fear that somebody would find my journal and
mhm.
somebody would read it. But I would still use, I would use real names. And I think that's another reason why I haven't told some stories. I think it's because I want to look at the story from all angles.
Mhm.
And sometimes and this is why I say I'm not emotionally available, I'm too close to it. I'm too close to it to present another side. Does that make sense? I'm too close to it to be really objective and to tell that story fully because I emotionally get locked.
Mhm.
And I have to be so open to the point where I can describe this story and in a way that I can get readers to feel as if they're living in that experience.
Mm.
So that's where I need to be to tell these stories.
Okay. What's your process of developing your craft? Like a lot of like we hear, putting in work and every day I'm hustling and all of that. But for me, I think that putting in work looks like you studying. Who are you studying? What are you studying? So it's a very quiet process. It's not just how many shows you can do.
Yeah, it is a quiet process. I'm constantly reading other people's work. Um, and my my problem is that I dip here and dip there and dip here and dip there because that's the way my mind works. So I'll start on a book and I won't completely finish it because another book has grabbed me or another book has grabbed me. And the same thing with plays. I also like to read how other writers um, how they have developed their process. I like to read what they go through. Who are their influencers? What influences them? There's a playwright that I know who's fabulous. His name is Luis Alfaro. He's I think, one of the greatest playwrights. And what I like about Luis is that he draws inspiration from anywhere. And this is what I learned from reading about him and his approach to his writing, his playwriting. He'll take a headline out of a paper and he'll look at that headline and he'll use that as a prompt. He'll go to different places to write and use the environment and the energy of the people as a prompt. So it's good to develop your craft by looking at other people who are doing the same thing. What are they doing? What are their processes? That's, I think, how you grow. And of course, getting books on the process. I just ordered a book on playwriting. But that's how you grow.
Well, speaking of playwriting, West Adams was amazing.
Thank you.
And I'm not just saying that because I love you so much. West Adams just like, I was shocked. I mean, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised because I know the writer that you are. But talk to us about West Adams.
West Adams was really interesting. This was a years-long process. And what I mean by years-long is I had been thinking about it, put it away, thinking about it, put it away.
West Adams is a play, by the way.
Yes, West Adams is a play. And I had written a couple of drafts, but when I got into the Skylab playwriting workshop, the drafts that I had written, out the window. I started, this is a new play, which I created out of that Skylab.
Did you have to audition to get into the Skylab, or what was that process like?
You have to submit 10 pages of your work
to
the Skylab, and they have a little application as well. But you do have to submit 10 pages of your work. But it was interesting because although I thought I knew that play, I didn't know the play until I got into Skylab. So whatever I had before didn't even matter, because what you're seeing is a whole new play that was literally birthed out of that Skylab.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so good. For the people who don't know the story of West Adams, I mean, I don't want you to give it away, but just tell us a little bit about it. Tell us.
West Adams is about 4 gentrifiers, 2 couples, who have moved into West Adams with a vision of what they feel this neighborhood should look like. And they're coming from Santa Monica. So they have a very distinct vision of how this neighborhood should look. They've been there for 3 years. They're ready to implement their vision. And who comes into the neighborhood but this wealthy woman? And she's white. And they're happy. And they say to themselves, this is the vision that we want. This is the new West Adams. But little do they know that the tables actually will be turned. And that vision that they so wanted for the neighborhood, well, so does another family. They want a vision for that neighborhood. And unfortunately, these 4 people feel that they are being pushed out. the tables have turned. I don't want to give it all away.
I don't want you to.
So
I don't want you to.
it's just that the tables have turned and they now feel as if they're being pushed down.
I love it.
And that their vision is not being honored.
Yeah, it was so good. Talk to us about 3 Seconds of Hell and what you went through with that.
3 Seconds of Hell. That was a series of stories. It's a book that I wrote. And it's a series of stories that was told to me by my father. My father, growing up in the 1950s South in Georgia, he refused to accept the status quo. And he would sit with me in the kitchen and he would start telling me stories. And it was almost as if he was living the rebellious side of who he was. Like he missed that part of himself. Now that he was a responsible father and, provider. It's almost as if he missed that part of himself. But in a way, he was still that rebellious young man. But he told me about his frustrations living in the South. And he didn't understand why the majority of Black people just didn't rise up against these white folks. He didn't get it, how they could all be ruled by one white man. And that stuck in his craw. And he and a couple of his friends formed this motorcycle gang, 3 Seconds of Hell. There were 3 of them. And they raised hell. So, yeah, it's just about his story during that time, what led him to that point, and how he navigated that with those around him.
So in closing, give the students in Going Deeper just some words of advice about just going deeper.
Oh, going deeper. A friend of mine who's a writer, Sigrid Gilmer, another brilliant writer. I showed her a script of mine. And she said, you got to lean in. Lean in. Don't be afraid to lean in. Leaning in is a good thing.
I love that.
Because leaning in, going deeper, means that you've ripped off all those inhibitions. And it's almost as if you're saying, you're saying, screw it. This is my truth. This is how I'm going to tell it, and I don't care. I don't care if someone doesn't like it, but this is what I have to say. Jahad, you said something I thought was beautiful about going deeper. Write like nobody's going to read it.
And we write like we have to post it.
Yeah.
Just
like
because
somebody's hanging over your shoulder.
Right. And we write like, but just because you tell the story in your journal does not mean you got to post it on Facebook.
Yes, you don't have to.
Yeah. And how are our characters going to go deeper if we can't?
Exactly. You have to go deeper, and you owe that to your characters.
You owe that.
You owe that. And another writer friend, Jacob Kruger, another great writer with great advice, told me, go to the gutter. Go to the gutter. You have to get down in there. And a lot of it, is painful. I wrote something in West Adams about the white character tells the Latino guy about his run-ins with the police. He and this woman, character Sarah, and they're both white. And how, this is what they did, and they were going to prison, but I just ripped off this, and I just put some new jeans on, and put on my smile, and worked my magic. And see, I'm not in prison, so, what are you worried about? You'll always get a second chance. When I wrote that, I wrote it from a place of anger and a place that I forgot that was there. When something happened with one of our relatives in Georgia, and so he couldn't he couldn't just put on a smile,
right,
or tear off some jeans, or do that. No, I mean, it was so intense where families, where they were calling my father all the way out in California to help find him, number one, because this was in Georgia. And they were all piecing money together. Piecing money. I was telling the director, that's the first time I heard that. But that was painful because it actually conjured up things for me that I had put away. So go deep, because you will surprise yourself what comes out in the work. And don't try to predict anything. Don't go for a result. Please don't do that. Don't say, well, I have to da 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 da. No, let it flow. Do not judge your characters. Let your characters talk to you. Don't tell them where to go.
I like that.
They'll tell you.
I like that. Don't tell them where to go. Right. And when we are attached to an ending or an outcome, then the character doesn't have free reign to speak. Right.
And sometimes you can still say, okay, this is my outcome, but let the characters drive you there. Don't force it, because we'll know when it's forced, because it won't make sense. Don't force it. Let your characters tell you, I need to get here, 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 so I can go here. Even if you're writing about yourself, don't start to edit. Say, well, I kind of did. No. Let yourself go and write the truth.
I think some of that early editing is not so much us protecting abusers. I think we're protecting ourselves.
Yes.
We don't want to look like the bad guy in the story.
And it's shameful. You don't want to look like an idiot.
Right. But there were times when we were. We were the bad guy. I mean, we didn't, we weren't born with all the knowledge.
Right.
There were times we were unkind.
Yeah.
There were times we were abusers. There were times we were liars. We were cheaters. There were times we did this. And I think sometimes we feel like if we say that, we're going to die.
Right.
And the world is going to find out.
Right.
And the truth is, there's nothing, I don't believe there's anything that we've ever done that hasn't been done. Yeah. And so I think a lot of it is us protecting ourselves.
And even if you have been abused, or if you've been bullied, or if something has happened to you, there's a lot of shame there.
We haven't dealt with.
And why are we feeling ashamed? It's because society didn't know how to deal with this situation, and therefore, instead of addressing it, just pulled out our shame.
But but the minute we start to get deeper with our characters, and our characters get into a place where they are the bad guy, we pull them out of it, because we're still protecting ourselves. Like, no, he didn't do that. He didn't. It wasn't him. We write some real quick. It was a dream.
Right. It was a dream. Or even beloved characters, like writing about my dad. It's hard to say, look, my dad beat people up.
We don't want to say that.
We don't want to say it. But in my book, if I wanted to be honest, he kicked the shit out of a lot of people. I mean, that's what he did. But it doesn't make him a bad person. It makes him human. And characters that you love, you say, I don't want people to see Aunt so-and-so and that she was really
Aunt so-and-so was a hoe.
Aunt so-and-so was a hoe. It's okay.
It's okay. And I'm not saying we have to tell Aunt so-and-so's story.
No.
We don't have to tell Aunt so-and-so's story, but we can present Aunt so-and-so in a way that is the truth.
The truth.
And still honors her. And that still honors her.
And you can say, my aunt loved the men.
My aunt loved the men.
One every single night. Right. Or my aunt loved to drink and smoke. Right. My aunt loved to cut up. My aunt, it's okay.
Right. And we don't have to leave it there. Because your aunt also bought you that frilly dress.
That's right.
Your aunt also told you stories. Right. We don't have to leave it there.
And see, that goes to not judging your character.
Right.
That's what we mean by don't judge. Don't judge them. Let people know this and that, but also aunt da-da-da-da.
Right. But we judge ourselves. And we hide behind, we got to be the good guy.
But that's the brilliant thing about the pen and about characters. You can always give your characters different points of view. So that's different parts of who you are. So all the people say, I am not writing from my experience. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. And I wrote a poem over 25 years ago, and I forget how it goes exactly, but it kind of began, never believe a poet telling a story about somebody else. That shit is you, bitch. That
It's
shit
you.
is you.
It's you.
You know what I'm
It's
saying?
you. It's you. It's you. And that's another thing about writing West Adams. You know, parts of me were in that story.
Yeah.
Parts of me were in it. So, you know, everything you write, bring yourself to it.
Mm-hmm.
But let the characters talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be afraid. I mean, having a life experience, that's the best thing you can have as a writer.
I love it. I remember, I don't remember what the incident was, but it was about Madonna. And the world was up in arms. I can't believe, and you did this, and you did this. You know what Madonna's response was?
What?
So?
Exactly.
I mean, and I'm not like a Madonna fangirl,
Right.
but
But it is.
I respect that.
Right.
So?
And it is so.
Mhm.
Like when I hear about Martin Luther King Jr.,
Right.
he had a white girlfriend, and
He sure did.
I mean, and how does that take away?
What else did he do?
from-
What else did he do?
Yeah.
Did that complete his story?
Right. And he slept with women. Yeah, and
Right.
I mean, I hope he slept with some women.
Right.
You know, even if he had a wife, he was a bit of an adulterer.
Right,
You know,
right.
you think about the pressure the man was under. He better sleep with somebody. You know?
I ain't gonna touch that. This is going deeper with Penelope. We might be going too deep.
We're going to
Thank you, Penelope. I love you.
Thank you.
Peace.
And happy writing.
Thanks.